Hello, everybody. This is Kyle from Stay Plugged In, and joining me today is Kendo. He's a caster, does a lot of high tier work with Rocket League, and has a lot of production management work as well in the Rocket League scene. Today, we're going to be talking about in the field of opportunities going beyond just playing in esports. There's a gajillion opportunities that you've seen in our other podcasts, and today we're looking at the casting and production side of things. So, without further ado, Kendo, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself, where you started playing in esports, what games got your interest captivated, and how it took you all the way to being a great caster in Rocket League scene.
To be honest, for me, it was more grassroots effort. But I'm Ken Carmen. You can find me on Twitter at KEND0SLICE. It's KEND0 and the word slice. You can find me pretty much anywhere else under that username, twitch.tv, Instagram, if you really like food pictures, because I am a bit of a foodie myself. You can't see the belly. It's there. Trust me, it exists. But yeah, for me, it was definitely more of a grassroots sort of thing because a lot of opportunities do exist from the bottom down. People bring you in, they will actually train you, spend time with you. And for me, I was part of a community called Minor League Doubles, now Minor League Esports. And casting had always been something that interested me a little bit. I mean, I grew up playing sports on a regular basis, and everything from the personalities of the broadcasters to the musical themes that went with the broadcasting, it just kind of gelled with me. I mean, I think of NBA on NBC. Yeah.
All those catchy tunes that you just, once you hear it, you know.
Yep. Exactly. And then like college basketball, the penultimate moment in college basketball, if you win, is the one shining moment. You literally have a song that goes with a moment of victory. Global horns in hockey. How can you forget that? Everyone's got their own unique foghorn. They have their own celebration. I grew up in Connecticut near Hartford, and the Hartford Whalers had a thing called the Brass Bonanza. It was something so much fun to listen to. You go to college and you have football with bands every time they score. It's amazing. I think of Rocky Top for Tennessee. I'm not even a Tennessee fan, but it's one of my favorite songs coming out of college football. And then even like WWE, WWF. You know it's fake, but
it just catches you.
Yeah, the production is so stinking good. The characters are so good, you can't resist it. And really, competition, no matter what the platform, it brings people in from every background. There's so much culture, and you really just want to entertain yourself in it for days. I got my start something small. And just my interest, that was the driving point there. And people came alongside me. They trained me up. As I got more and more comfortable, I had opportunities outside of my starting point. And that's where things really started flying, because there was a lot of people that I had the opportunity to cast with that are major facets now in the Rocket League community.
Yeah, 100%. I think you went through a lot of really interesting highlights of the production side of things, all those catchy tunes, and like when it's NBC, my favorite sport's football, and when it's NBC Sunday Night Football, right? You got Carrie Underwood out there, and it's just fantastic. It gets you going, it's something that captivates you, and that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish, I think, both of us in esports. Esports is so new, right? Like, it's been around for a little while, but for the production side of things, there is no iconic thing yet at that level, right? NBC, Sunday Night Football on NBC, right? NBC, NBA. All of that, not there yet, but there's definitely strides we can take. Definitely getting, more and more kids involved in esports and helping them develop their passions and foster those skills into the workforce, into production teams like an ESPN for esports, for example. So that's all incredible, and I think those are great goals to have, especially in the esports world. So moving forward, you mentioned all of those. So how do you go about, from your production perspective and your casting background, how do you go about trying to build those foundations to attain those goals?
For me, I come from a small community, so that's where my focus is going to be 90% of the time. It's focus on that community. You think about what a broadcast is and what sport is, what esport is. It brings in so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And I'm the voice that they're hearing as a caster. I become part of that presentation that everyone in that moment has in common. So my goal is to try to bring everyone along to where the experience is amazing for everyone. And that's a challenge. It's a big challenge, but
That's a
it's
goal
also
that's very hard to attain for sure.
it's also amazingly fun,
Exactly.
especially because they're along for the same ride I am.
Mhm.
And they get to experience the same highs, the same lows that I do.
Mhm.
Above all, when you're trying to build a community, though, I want to be approachable. And I think back to a moment that I had just being a spectator. And that was at the Collegiate Rocket League, the first LAN. It was down in Arlington, Texas, literally in the shadow of the Jerry World, just
Yeah.
down the road.
That
You
very
saw,
big stadium, right? Pretty sure it's
yeah,
big.
yeah. That's the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. It's literally like a block and a half away at the esports stadium in Arlington, and I got to meet so many different people who were role models for me, who I had never casted with, and there was one person in particular. His name's Subi Smash, Travis Hale. He actually talked to me on a personal level after everything. He came to me to talk to me, and that's it's one thing if I'm walking up to him and being a little bit creepy and be like, "Hey, man." Big fan. I tell you what, amazing stuff. And then that engages the conversation. I want to be someone who engages the community enough that they look at me and it's like, okay, we all have something in common. This experience is something that is huge and it can drive each and every one of us.
Mhm.
It it reaches us on an individual level.
Mhm.
However, because of the community focus, we can create something that's really, really special. And plus, you think about the community is what we still have after the presentation is over with. These are just small little spotlights that were
Exactly.
raining on people for just a small moment. Once the presentation is gone, once everyone's broken a leg and the LAN is over, what happens? Well, that's where the community comes in. And
Mhm.
that's my personal focus when I go into production. It's more than just the singular event. It's how can this community grow through this event? How can other people benefit from it? And how can we bring everybody together?
Exactly. And I think that's an incredible way to approach the community in esports. And I think the community in esports is so special because we look at traditional sports at the professional level at all aspects of it, right? Players, coaches, production, commentators, casters, whatever it may be, they're somewhat disconnected from their fan base, right? They do a lot of good work and they're so popular it's hard to be connected to all of them. But in esports, we have Twitch, we have Mixer,
Mhm.
right? We have streaming platforms that, like what we're doing right now, this is going to be streamed one day and it's going to be hopefully very well followed. But for the players, they can go after their Pro League game, right? Log on to their Twitch, fire up the stream, and talk to all their fans just like that. And they can take questions at an instant notice. They can be way more interactive with them. And I think that's something fantastic about esports is that the community is so tightly knit and everyone appreciates each other a good deal, right?
Mhm.
But I have
Absolutely.
a question for you along those lines. What about outside of that community, right? Esports is still largely new, and there's a lot of just unknowns with it unless you play in it, unless you produce it, right? Unless you're
Mhm.
directly involved in that community. You might not know anything about it. You might, hey, I've heard of it. It's pretty cool. My son or daughter plays this game or that game in an esports competitive sense, or maybe they just game. How do we go about, giving those folks some more knowledge, some more education on what we're all about and what we're trying to accomplish?
I I think this actually starts with culture more than anything else, because you look at the video game culture in the past and it's like, bro, I grew up in my closet playing video games away from my parents, hiding from anybody, and I did it to get away from people to begin with. Where things need to start changing is it has to be something that's socially accepted. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
something that's brought forward into the light where, okay, you have people who play these games really well, good enough to
Mm-hmm.
be professional. They have to maintain themselves, they have to maintain their skill set, and they have to continue to push themselves. This goes along the lines of production as well, because people who are in production and want to improve, they have to improve consistently. They have to continue to get their reps in. It's practice, practice, practice.
Mm-hmm.
The culture needs to change though, because we still look at video games that same way. That, okay, this is my 15-year-old son, and I speak from a dad's perspective because I'm a 32-year-old man with two children. But here's my 15-year-old son, and he plays this weird game where he hits a ball with a car into a goal. Or here's my son who practices war games on a regular basis, and I'm not sure if he's psychotic or not. The only thing I hear out of him is, "Mom, where's dinner?" And it, if we change the culture, a lot like they've done really over in South Korea, it becomes more socially normal. You start seeing it more as a social accepted entertainment. I think that would go a long way. We just need to change the culture.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think culture is a good aspect to look at in that sense. And I think some of the fear that's associated with video games, especially like the war games and the FPSs,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the research, it's actually quite the opposite. Those games are so in depth that they involve so much strategy and tactics, high level cognitive functioning and thinking and problem solving, advanced predictive behavior, right? You're constantly trying to predict what your opponent is going to do. When you look at the research, it actually shows a quite opposite trend in that these kids that play these games at a high level, they develop soft skills, so to say, that are applicable to the rest of their life. It helps them time management, like, right? We had another guest in the show, Mike Aguilar, that said, where else in the entire world do you see, and you're talking about World of Warcraft raids, you see 40 people across states, countries, time zones, different hemispheres, like so far spread apart. Where do you see them in real time communing together in perfect tandem under high stress, accomplishing a common goal all together?
You don't.
You don't really.
You
The only place
absolutely
you might
don't.
see it's the military, right?
Yeah.
That's the only place, but like not everyone's going to go in the military, obviously. So you're developing skills that are very hard to practice or train for unless you're in a very dedicated environment for that. So
Yeah.
I think, showing that, trying to expose the culture to that, like, hey, it's more than just I'm just chilling, I'm just gonna play some games. You're actually developing really, really great skills that you can use in the workforce and casting production, of course. You can use in the collegiate sphere as you move to the next level. So many other places as well. So I think it's fantastic, and I think as we seek to expand the knowledge into outside of the community, I think it's going to start to change slowly, and you're going to see this tight knit community grow and expand and involve so many more people. Where you're going to see, hey, mom, instead of going to high school football on Friday nights, you're on Saturday nights, you're going to the local land center and you're going to play, in Fortnite or Rocket League or anything like that. And that's going to
Yeah.
be a great, marking mile marker for esports, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, as moving forward, I talked about some of those soft skills. I'm sure you've gamed quite a bit, obviously, as a caster and producer. Where do you use those soft skills that you've developed playing competitive gaming or just gaming in general that you use today, casting, producing, and all that kind of great stuff?
I, let's see here. I mean, for someone who is pursuing, whether it be casting or even as a player, I focus mainly on the casting though, because that's where my forte is, and I feel like that starts with structure more than anything else. It's very easy to just jump in and be like, "Hey, this is easy. This is just a guy talking out of his nose and continuing to push forward this weird content." But a lot of the underlying thing that people don't realize is that casting actually starts with a structure. Every commentary, there is a structure. It doesn't matter whether it's professional, actual real life sports, esports, whether you're doing first person shooters, whether you're playing Rocket League, or maybe even you're casting Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, whatever
Yep.
it may be. there's a structure, there's a pacing.
Mm-hmm.
And having that as a foundation, as a boundary to keep yourself on the hinges,
Mm-hmm.
as it were, it's the most important part. And it's the starting point for both your personal development and as a caster. It also helps in your ability to adapt to the others who are co-casters in your field.
Exactly.
And once you know that structure and you understand the structure that you're trying to keep, you have essentially a skeleton, a body of work to begin.
Mm-hmm.
You can fill in the rest of that with repetition. And that's where I said practice, practice, practice comes in. You find as many opportunities as you can possibly do to practice, whether that be casting, whether that be, and like it even just branching over into the competitive thought, like coming from a Rocket League background. Once you actually structure yourself in a strategy, you practice that strategy over and over. 3 people on the same field thinking the same exact way in circumstances minimizes mistakes. It creates a much more refined product, and it's that way in production just as much as it is in gameplay.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point in structure. And ultimately, when you look at practice, it's quality over quantity as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, quantity is important. You need to practice enough. So you develop those strategies and tactics to a very fine point, perfect manner, right? But you're making sure you have a goal, right? That structure, that skeleton you were talking about is well defined. You know what you're trying to achieve, you know what you're striving towards. And having that quality in place will help you in the long run than just playing, right? So many times you see a lot of people in gaming that just sit down and just play really mindlessly, or like you said earlier, as an escape form, right? Which there's nothing wrong with that. That can be a pastime, but when you look at it in a competitive sense, you need that quality there. You need that common goal, that structure to strive towards, so you can continuously improve over time and get to that next level, whether that's, making a team at high school, getting into a collegiate team, or becoming a pro in any game, right? So I think we got time for one more question. So we've both been involved in esports for quite a while. I want to ask about the future of esports. Where do you see esports expanding to in the next year, in the next 5 years? And that's an open-ended question, so I'm going to let you take that in whatever way you want.
I appreciate that question, because really where we are currently in the world, I feel like this is the golden moment for esports to shine. In this next year, these next 6 months even, are the most critical time in the history of esports within the North American continent, within what we know throughout the world, really. If we're able to get a foothold in the country's mainstream media, right now we need to full send everything we have, while people who would normally be watching the never-ending barrage of football, basketball, XFL, they have no other option right now. You literally look at Twitter right now, you got Larry the Cable Guy going off about simulated football. There's nobody behind the controllers. This is literally throwing a simulation of a game with made up players and made up teams, and people are like, okay, you know what, it's still football, it's still enjoyable.
It's something.
The presentation, it's not like it's lacking.
Exactly.
If they fall in love with the games that we have to present to them the same way that we have, we could not only see a growth in watching, but I feel like there could be a growth in playing and awareness of gaming like never before. And that, I feel like, is where the culture has an opportunity to change. Because if we are in the mainstream and we have those opportunities, and this is all of a sudden a lot more socially acceptable, it could affect the entire next 5 years. Like you look at South Korea, everything is mainstream there. It's socially acceptable to make hundreds of thousands of dollars for being extremely good at video games. League of Legends especially would be a primary mainstay in Korea. They're at the pinnacle of entertainment over there. And right now there's a structure where we see some of our entertainers within esports going places. I think of Golden Boy,
Yeah.
who has gone from being a host to a very large number of esports events to now he's a personality on AEW Wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
getting to cast with Jim Ross himself,
Mm-hmm.
who's really like, if you go back, by God, he's a legend.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing that there are opportunities like that, but the door is open right now. And if esports can find a foothold, just imagine what the next 5 years could be like. Imagine ESPNE, the channel, where we
Mm-hmm.
have a esports dedicated sports channel where people can literally click on their television and zoom in on the opportunities
Mm-hmm.
that are right before us within the esports world.
Exactly. And I think during these very uncertain times, we really do hope everyone's staying healthy, staying happy. Make sure you're taking care of yourself in these very precarious times. Pay attention to the news, pay attention to the experts. Try to stay healthy. But there's no sports, and people are looking for something to fill that gap. So this is an opportunity for esports. Even though it's a tragic case in the world, and our thoughts and feelings go out to everybody who's affected by this. But let's, as a community, raise that awareness, right? No one's doing anything right now. Everything's closed down. No one knows what to do. Everyone wants some form of entertainment, and esports can 100% provide that. Take the time, learn, sit down with your family members that might know it, or your friends that might know it a little more than you, and just ask some simple questions. We're not at, you don't have to become a master overnight. You certainly won't in League of Legends or Siege or CS:GOs, and some of the very popular esports that are crazy in depth. Rocket League included in that. Um, Sit down, ask a few questions, make the people that are involved in it feel appreciated. Especially like all of us are working a lot of long hours because we all are trying to develop tournaments because our players have more time than ever to play in these tournaments. So sit down, enjoy, try to be involved a little bit more, and just raise your awareness. And I think that's a great way to really take the next step in the culture around surrounding esports. So that's all we have the time for today. Everyone, this was KEND0SLICE. KEND0SLICE, any parting words for us? Go ahead and plug yourself again.
Yeah, Ken Carmen at KEND0SLICE on Twitter, Twitch TV, as well as Instagram. I mean, you can also, if you are interested in personal inquiries, kendocasts@gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email. Heck, you can just send me a thank you if I did a good job right here. I mean, that it goes a long way letting people know that, hey, they did a great job, and appreciate y'all for watching.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Everyone, stay healthy, stay positive, and stay plugged in.